folded hands and my deepest reverence, I, Devinder Singh, welcome all to the first online session of the Boston Pledge Educators Springboard program, first of its kind, hosted by the famous Bentley University. I'm extremely delighted to let you know we are joined by educators from 4 continents, 11 countries, 18 Indian states, 45 plus cities globally. What a diverse and august gathering. Indeed, we are fortunate to have a galaxy of speakers today. A quick administrative announcement. All the participants are humbly requested to put their microphone on mute while others are speaking on the floor. For any question, you may type in the chat box. To add comments or to add a point, use the raise hand icon, and a humble request to maintain the sanctity of time frame. Before I invite Chairman of the Boston Pledge, Dr. Partho Ghosh, the man who has a vision for global education, specifically for India and the entire Southeast Asia. Let me now invite our convener of today's session, Dr. Jahangir Sultan, Professor of Finance, Bentley University, to introduce the Boston Pledge and session forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Devinder. It's a pleasure and privilege for me to attend this session. And let me briefly mention something about the Boston Pledge. The TBP, Boston Pledge, is a non-profit organization that brings together outstanding professionals from many disciplines. We are committed to public service to directly address issues at the base of the pyramid. We offer entrepreneurship springboard program to locate, educate, and facilitate bottom-up enterprising. We hold annual conferences to raise consciousness on development issues. We're also engaged in several critical initiatives, including Model Village, Rural Innovation Center Enterprise, Leadership Development, and TBP Digital to connect school students from privileged and underprivileged regions. Our approach is simple. We listen to you, identify issues, and then marshal our humble resources to provide solutions at the grassroots level. Our strong conviction and belief is that by transcending the constraints of self-interest and limits of national borders, by providing outstanding leadership in channeling intellectual know-how and financial resources, and by focusing on uncovering the inner power within people at the grassroots, we will be able to create a virtuous, progressive, and more equitable and sustainable society. It's ambitious, but we are going to work hard and we need your help. Please visit our website, thebostonpledge.org, for more information. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce the brainchild and the chairman of the Boston Pledge, my friend, Mr. Partho Ghosh.
Thank you. Thank you, Jahangir. Thank you, Devinder. Thanks to all of you on behalf of the Boston Pledge movement for joining us on the auspicious July 4th day, a day that symbolizes the spirit of freedom and the spirit of courage. As a member of the global community, engaged with a full range of socioeconomic issues across nations, that's how I've grown up. I do believe today we are in the red zone of human civilization, and I underscore red zone. And we are genuinely concerned with the significant challenges our civilization is faced with. It reminds me of Vivekananda's speech in Chicago. We have representation from Chicago. That we have come to a point where you have to think differently. And that's why we have assembled here today. The nature of our response has to be equally significant. We need to be bold in our resolve, humble and open-minded in our search, and imaginative in shaping solutions. Now, with the coronavirus assault on human health is serious and hopefully temporary, though many of us believe it may last another 3 to 5 years. The political and economic upheaval it has unleashed across nation could last for generations. And that something bothers us. More importantly, the underlying problems such as the socioeconomic divide, digital divide, the decadence on human conscience, ecological disequilibrium, declining ethics, increasing distrust in institutions, which have been making the last 2-3 decades, have now become very visible, which we can no longer neglect. But the biggest, and that's why we are meeting today, the biggest concern of all is the lockdown or disruption of the education system. And I really mean the lockdown and disruption of the education system, as it hurts the development of young minds, which could create a permanent and deep scar on how our future might evolve. And that's why we are assembled today. Internet-enabled, Zoom-driven education could work for a few, but majority, perhaps 70% of student population is out of that reach, which I'm afraid will further increase the knowledge divide between have and have-nots, whose severity could haunt us for multiple generations as the knowledge economy becomes more important. Furthermore, while the term remote or online learning has been fashioned, it clearly undermines something very important, which is the connectivity between the faculty, the teacher, and the student, and particularly important in times we are living for the emotional, spiritual, intellectual development of the young mind. So we have to be innovative in today's conference to think of how do we maintain that nexus between the teacher and the student while practicing physical distancing, keeping in mind that the internet is not available for everyone, the Zoom is not available for everyone. But that doesn't mean there's no solution. We have to be extremely imaginative today. So I personally feel what a great time. What a great time for educators to think fresh, think micro, think macro, think global, yet local, be spiritual, and be digital in our thinking. On the positive note, in shaping the future, we must not miss out the opportunity to resurrect the wisdom resident in India's ancient education system that flourished in the ecosystem between the two universities, Taxila and Nalanda, and many others, for a holistic development of what I call the SQ, spiritual quotient, IQ, the intelligent quotient, and emotional quotient, which is dramatically missing in today's advanced education system. So it is an opportunity. I'm so glad Maharaj is with us to think of how to bring all these streams of thinking to create a new promise of education. So with these humble thoughts, let me welcome you to this assembly. We will need to look forward to listening to all of you so that we could truly develop a strategic response, which is practical, yet transformational, above all imaginative and inclusive. We are living in an age of mega turbulence. Equally turbulent have to be our thoughts so that we could navigate through the turbulence and shape the new world order. And once again, thank you very much for joining this assembly. I will pass it back to the Master of Ceremony, who will invite my very, very good friend, Dr. Sam Petroda. Where's our MC? Sam, you're there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Please go ahead. I'm
Okay.
sorry that I think it's...
No, thank you, Partha. Good morning, everyone. Greetings from Chicago. Partha has been a very close friend for many years. He called me a few weeks ago, and I really want to compliment him and all his colleagues for this great initiative. I have had an opportunity to work on education with the government of India for quite some time. During Dr. Manmohan Singh's time, we had set up a National Knowledge Commission to look at the institutions and infrastructure India would need in the 21st century for knowledge, which includes education. So quickly, I want to give you a sort of overview of what it was and how it relates to what you are planning to do here. To us, knowledge was the key, more so than education. So we looked at 5 aspects of knowledge. Access to knowledge, which include languages, translation, library, broadband, networks, affirmative action programs, reservations, quotas. Then we looked at all knowledge concepts: primary education, secondary education, distance learning, open courseware, higher education, engineering, medical, law, all of the different disciplines. How do we get more of our kids into PhD programs? And then we looked at knowledge creation. Who creates knowledge? How knowledge is created? Which included intellectual property, innovation, entrepreneurship, copyrights, and application of knowledge in agriculture, health, and finally, use of knowledge in governance. So we had about 27 different subjects. We took about 4.5 years. Sum total, we had roughly 2,000 people involved in the exercise. And there is a great report of the National Knowledge Commission published. It is online, you can look at it. There were 300 different recommendations. Some of it got done, some of it didn't get done because they were highly political. We built, for example, a national knowledge network at the cost of $4 billion to connect 1,100 nodes, to connect all our universities, libraries, R&D institutions, connect that network to US, Japan, Europe, and all that. This network has become the core for all educational infrastructure in the country. But not many people know how to use it. So I will strongly recommend all of you to look at that report, because many of the things you plan to discuss today were in the report. For example, the core idea was embedded in 3 needs: expansion, excellence, and equity. We wanted to make sure that our universities expand from 300 then to 1,000. Today we have about 900 universities. When we started, we had 300. Idea is to improve quality of education, excellence, which is still a big challenge. And third is essentially equity. We have to make sure that the poorest of the poor can indeed get the best education possible. Finally, to summarize, I would say there are 5 key points that I would like to emphasize for all of us. 1, education is not just empowering, but it's also redefining yourself. I'm a son of a carpenter. When I got my degree in physics, in computer science, people forgot what my caste was. I got empowered. And every everyone must recognize that education is redefining yourself. And it is a lifelong process. You go on redefining yourself every 10, 20, 15, 5 years. Education doesn't happen in school only. It cannot be in isolation. It begins at home, with your friends, in your environment, in your ecosystem. A little child needs to be told what salt is all about. It is not white powder. It is chemistry. It is food. It is taste. And all of these things happen not just in school. So school, according to me, is one little element in education. Third, today there are three important things in education. One, motivation. If I'm motivated to learn something, no one can stop me. Two, time. Am I willing to devote time required to learn something? And three, content. Fortunately, best of the best brains have developed some great content on the internet. Online learning is here to stay. It is going to expand. A lot of people have resisted it. But I believe online learning is going to empower us. It will force us to create new business models. At the end of the day, the real challenge is to make somebody self-learner. If we can make our kid self-learner at the age of 12, 15, you don't need 4 years degree program. You don't need to spend $200,000 to get an MBA. Brick and mortar education system, according to me, cannot last for too long because it is too expensive. It is elitist to some extent. It has its place in the society. But if we want to democratize education, we need to really focus on new ways of learning. Again, if you are motivated, if you are willing to devote time, there is enough content available from best of the best in the world for you to learn. It may not be 100%, but it's good enough if it is free. So education must be democratized. We must focus on making people self-learner. And today's system do not allow us to create people who are self-learners. With this, I want to once again thank Partha and his team for giving me this opportunity. I want to wish you all a great conference. I will hang in there for a while. I have another video to attend. So when the time comes, I will quietly leave, but really appreciate the opportunity to interact. I live in Chicago. I'm available. I'm a friend of Partha. That's my qualification. So you can reach me through Partha. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Petroda. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, now may I call upon Dr. Madhusudan Chakravarti, former director of two IITs, Bhubaneswar and Kharagpur, for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Sultan. Good morning to people in the US. Good evening to people in India. At the outset, I have to thank Partha, who happens to be a good friend for many, many years, for inviting me here to share my thoughts, particularly on higher education. We are really meeting at a time when the whole education system all over the world has been really bettered by the coronavirus pandemic. So we have a lot of our concerns about the education system, and the pandemic has added a new dimension to it. The education system have seen rapid changes since time immemorial with the advances in science and technology. So there have been a lot of changes, a lot of interventions, and with the speed of information sharing, we have been able to change the education system. But education system now, the way it stands, it needs a lot of reforms. So I, as Jahangir has said, and Parth has been warning me about the time, I'd like to share some of my concerns. And my first concern about the present day education system that we have in higher education is extensive commercialization. This extensive, I'm sorry. This extensive commercialization has resulted in lowering the benchmark in education because of one number is shortage in faculty. People are not willing to come to work as faculty or take faculty teaching as a profession. The quality of faculty or the experience of the faculty is not enough to impart good education. Shortage of faculty. Because of the shortage of faculty, there are many universities who are running, and the faculty members are overloaded. I don't think they get enough time to even prepare for the class. Students are being lured. A lot of students are joining without whether they are suitable or not for a particular program. There is hardly any research. There is no effort of creation of new knowledge. So the extensive commercialization has lowered the benchmark of education like anything. My second concern is, too much of a specialization, too narrow specialization at the undergraduate level. The undergraduate should be more of a foundation type of a degree program. The students who graduate with their undergraduate degree, BA, BCom, BTech, etc., they should be able to move at each laterally from one discipline to another discipline. But the commercialization led to the creation of narrow specializations at the undergraduate level, and the students are being lured to different programs. The students come out of the schools and they're confused and they do not know what kind of program they have to consider for their career path. And after they join the program, many of them, they find they're pursuing the wrong path, and that leads to frustration, unemployment. Because of the excessive commercialization and this kind of narrow specialization, we are turning out graduates who are unemployable. This is a common knowledge to everybody. My third point was really about the online education. It seems when the pandemic has come in, everybody thought there's a eureka moment for online education. And business and I should say that the market force is pushing that we should really go for online education. But I'd like to point out that online education can only be supplemental. It cannot replace the education, as I think Sam was pointing out. For the development of a student, for the overall personal development, the students do not learn only in classrooms. So just replacing a physical classroom by a digital classroom or virtual classroom is not going to help the education system. I am sad to tell you very recently, as Partho was pointing out, there is a big divide. 70% of the people do not have access to online education. A young girl student committed suicide because she could not attend classes. She did not have a smartphone. This kind of situation cannot be permitted to continue. I think I can go on and on with my all experience because I spent my whole life in the education sector. And I also had the opportunity to build new IIT. with my experience, I can tell you that we have to now we got to go for a strategic planning on how to really deal with the situation, rather the complex situation, and how we can make changes. Let me tell you, the commercialization of education has come in for quite some time. If you want to make a dent, it will take really some time, and you have to make strong efforts. I think with these words, I'd like to thank Partho and the Boston Place for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts on higher education. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, Ms. Shahana Singh, author, writer, columnist, for 3 minutes. Over to you, ma'am.
Namaste. It's a privilege to be amidst all of you. Just like the others, I'm reflecting that today we are seeing a collapse of systems around us. The economy, education, industry. So we are really at the crossroads today. And if you look deeply into what is the reason for this, as many others observed, it is a failure of the education system. So the world was running like there was no tomorrow, right? There was unbridled consumption. Products were being shipped from one end of the world to another end. There were diseases like cancer, autoimmune diseases, mental health issues that were devastating people. And there was, on top of that, there was environmental pollution. There was huge over extraction of resources. And there was climate change. All these things basically the world was already unraveling when COVID struck. So at the core of it, I see that there is a disconnect from true knowledge, a disconnect from the self, from understanding the self, and a disconnect from knowing the goals of humanity. Are we here to maximize profit? Do we need to maximize our happiness? So all these things were not clear to us. So today I would like to make 3 main points. The first one is that we need to connect urgently to the educational heritage of ancient India. If you go back a few thousand years ago, you will see that India was the education capital of the world. Thousands of people came to India from every part of the world, which was civilized. Whether you take the western part, which is Western Asia, or the eastern part, Japan, Indonesia, Malaysia, students were flocking to study in India. And the reason was that India was offering a wonderful ecosystem of learning in the open air, and open to all thoughts. And there was the culture of debating, culture of coming to the truth by discussions. All this was there in India. And we had the Vedas, we had Upanishads, we had the Vedangas, the epics Ramayana and Mahabharata, right? And the sciences like Ayurveda, Sulba Sutras, Ganita Shastras. In fact, even today, all these are relevant. These are like a treasure trove for the whole of humanity. And they offer universal concepts like sustainability, which anybody can plug into. So my first point is we need to urgently connect to the ancient wisdom of India. And my second point is that educators need to look at the minds of children, not like containers into which they have to stuff in facts and formulae. They have to look at the minds of children as if they are lamps that need to be lit. So when the lamp is lit, the student will illuminate himself or herself from within and then show the path to others. So this is the Vedic way of teaching. This is the Vedic education of inspiring and lighting the lamp. My third point is that we need to connect with our mother tongues, our native languages, and Sanskrit. Of course, I'm not against English. I'm speaking to you all in English right now. English is an important language we need to learn. But please let us not lose our connection with our native languages. There is a lot of knowledge waiting to be tapped in our languages, in books, as well as in the speakers of those languages. There is a lot of knowledge. So we need to connect with that. So, it's like when we harvest rainwater, the water table goes up. And in the same way, when we connect with our ancient heritage, as well as these languages, the body of knowledge will go up, and that will help us to face a lot of problems that we are tackling today. So these are my thoughts today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Now, may I call upon Swami Krishnanathanandaji, and my sincere apologies, we have different names spelled against your video. Over to you, sir.
Thank you all for joining. Thank you all for joining this session. And I'll speak on the spiritual element of Swamiji's mission, man-making education. Salutations to Swami Vivekananda. And the key to Swami Vivekananda's educational doctrine lies in his famous definition of education. Education is the manifestation of perfection already in man. For Swamiji, the real nature of man is pure consciousness, mind and body forming only the coverings of the real self called Atman. And knowledge exists neither in the external objects nor in the mind. It is the very nature of Atman. And every act of knowing is thus an act of self-revelation. All knowledge lies within us, says Swamiji. And the act of knowing manifests this inner light. And from this, let us understand the similarity between Swamiji's definition of education and his definition of religion. According to Swamiji, religion is the manifestation of divinity already in man. And for Vivekananda, ordinary education is only a part of the individual's larger attempt at self-realization, which he means by the word religion. And that is why Swamiji said at one place that I look upon religion as the innermost core of education. And Swamiji's idea of education was that it should have religion, spirituality as the core subject in the curriculum. And closely connected with Swamiji's theory of religion as the core subject is his idea that the purpose of education is man-making. He says that education is not the amount of information that is put into your brain and runs riot there, undigested all your life. We must have life-building, man-making, character-making assimilation of ideas. And indeed, at the root of man-making education of Swamiji lies the ideal of Shraddha, that is the faith in one's spiritual nature. It is this lack of faith in themselves and higher values of life that is the bane of modern youth, we find. And Swamiji wanted to restore this faith, and he placed great importance on Shraddha or faith as an integral part of education. Another thing, we know that one of the chief achievements of the ancient Hindu sages was development of the science of concentration. It is rich full of Hindu spiritual disciplines. Swamiji wanted to introduce the benefit of these discoveries into the field of education and apply it as a means of quickening and widening the educative process. The knowledge and moral character that student acquires through education should help him in facing the problems of life and to earn a decent livelihood. It should enable him to stand on his own legs. And to wrap up, Swami Vivekananda's perception of education is a striking departure from what is ordinarily understood by the world. One might safely say that Swamiji acquired his unique insight into the true meaning of education by sitting at the feet of the almost unlettered priest of Dakshineshwar, Sri Ramakrishna. Swamiji's training under Sri Ramakrishna, coupled with his own numerous experiences in the subsequent years, enabled him to evolve the grand educational ethos of which we just had a little glimpse during this brief while. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, may I call upon Dr. Subarna Bose, CEO, International Hospitality Council, London, and Chairman, International Institute of Hotel Management and Indian Smart Group. Dr. Subarna Bose.
Yeah, it's a great privilege to come and speak to this very interesting topic, and I think this is a very exciting time. And as we all say, that this kind of situation actually have taught us a lot of new tricks and a lot of new opportunities. I think the education for ones in India especially have really got, I think, 10 years of acceleration in terms of digitization and digital delivery. Mr. Pitroda was speaking about democratization of education, and I don't think that there is no other better vehicle than the digital media to take it forward. And I mean, just like right now, we are talking from different part of the world, just on a laptop or a mobile phone. I mean, the technology has brought everybody in the world so closer because of this pandemic. And I think this is one of the big takeaway. Obviously, there are areas where digital education are possibly not that great, but I think on the whole, these are the exciting time for the entire education fraternity of the country, where we can actually use the resources, we can use the technology to reduce the digital divide. I mean, one of the panelists was speaking about the faculty and the shortage. I think with the digital technology, you don't have any problem about the faculty now. You can have people teaching you from all over the world, and you don't need to be coming and physically teaching there, because I think the teaching in digital media can be actually much more engaging at times. We have seen in a lot of institutions that the digital delivery has been extremely useful and actually much more engaging, and a lot of students who generally don't ask any question in a classroom, especially in undergrad, are asking a lot of questions because there is no peer sitting around him, there is no fear. So I think this is a great exciting time. Regarding the challenges, I think the biggest challenge is that our faculty, the teachers of the universities were never been trained on the online platform delivery. So I think within 48 hours or 3 days, they have been told to go and deliver online classes. And what they did was that they replicated what they used to do in front of the blackboard, and which is exactly what was not expected, because the online delivery is a different learning strategy where the engagement level is much higher than when you teach actually one-to-one. So our faculty, the professors, and I've seen a lot of highly educated professors, they're struggling to teach from the laptop because they have never been taught that the online delivery is so different. Secondly, that a lot of colleges and universities are only doing the class as schools, I think, are very important, because the school kids are the guys who needs much more engagement, because we just can't teach them for 8 hours or 6 hours. We need to engage them. We need to have competition. We need to have things like a singing competition, debate competition, quiz contest. We can have possibly games and whatever. I mean, the online delivery doesn't mean that you just go and teach. No, it's not like that. It's about engaging. It's about touching your students as if they're in the college or the school environment. I think that is what we have learned actually, and that exactly, I think, what we were never been taught. I mean, as professors, we have never been taught the strategies of online education. So these are, I think, for a takeaway. I'm very optimistic that the digitization and the digital technology is been the biggest blessing in this pandemic time. It has taken the Indian education system, I think, 10 years ahead in terms of delivering, in terms of faculty, in terms of resources, in terms of connecting at any time of the day, in terms of assessments, in terms like we are right now in Zoom. In Zoom, we have something called breakout rooms, where we all can be doing our own assessment, assignment in each of the room, and no one can see us, and then we can all come in a main hall and present. So there are amazing opportunities that technology is now offering, and we should be very grateful that that's happened because of this. For some reason, I think we have no complaints. We should take it forward, COVID or no COVID, and this will change the entire landscape of the Indian education delivery. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much. Now, may I call upon Professor Maninder Singh, President of Punjab State Council, Guru Gobind Singh Student Circle.
Hello, I'm audible, sir.
Am I audible, sir? Yes, you are.
Okay. So, a very good day to all the eminent personalities who've spoken before me and all the worthy delegates yet to come. To begin with, glory to the Almighty, who is the source of all knowledge, all wisdom, all power, all beauty. Instead of discussing the technicalities of education, how to implement it in the modern context, I've been teaching in an engineering college, and before that in a polytechnic. I'm a computer engineer by education and a teacher by profession, and a volunteer by as an NGO. I'm the president of the Punjab State Council of Guru Gobind Singh Study Circle. So from all these aspects, what I have gathered is education needs to be addressed at its roots. It is from there we need to go to the basics, and we need to rethink on what is the intent, then what should be the content, and then how it should be delivered. Now, again, it is an opinion, not a statement, and I'm really humbled by being with this August gathering here. So as far as education, I would like to say that from day one, mankind has been curiously observing nature and gathering information about the various elements. This information has been used to tap and harness the various resources by humans to their advantage. The information and experience thus acquired and passed on through generations with value addition is what we may call education. Going back to the past times, Plato, a very eminent philosopher, 2,500 years back, he regards education as a means to achieve justice, both individual justice and social justice. According to Plato, individual justice can be obtained when each individual develops his or her ability to the fullest. In this sense, justice means excellence. For Plato and for the Greeks, excellence is virtue. Incompetence breeds corruption, which results in social degradation. Now, justice in this sense is thus the cornerstone for a sustainable social order. And 2,000 years later, or we can say a little more than 500 years ago, we've just celebrated the 550th birth anniversary of that great teacher, Guru Nanak. Guru Nanak revealed Vidya Vichari Taparopkari. That is, contemplate and reflect on the knowledge, and you will become the benefactor of all. Education will and should inculcate compassion, love, empathy, and selfless service for all. All. Again, I emphasize all. Sarbat, everyone. The whole creation. He further reveals that the scholar who harbors greed, avarice, and pride is said to be a fool. Padya murkh aakhiye, jis lab lob hankara. So very strong words. He is not a scholar, he is a fool who, despite good education, harbors greed, avarice, and pride. So it is the virtues that the education needs to inculcate and impart. Justice stands for fairness, and it is the cornerstone for a sustainable social order. But then God is not fair. God is not fair. God is merciful. And justice with mercy, service unto humanity out of love and empathy, is the cornerstone for a sustainable and blissful individual life as well as a social order. Now, all awareness of the creation, all awareness, just like seeing a piece of art, we get to the artist. The beauty of the art conveys the beauty of the artist. So here, all awareness of the creation must lead to appreciation and admiration for the creator, and visualize and realize his manifestation in the creation. Ghat ghat mein har ju bas hai. An educated person is that who sees the light of the Almighty in every heart, in every person he sees. So he is the creator is manifested in the creation. All physical and material knowledge connects to and reflects the magnificent creator, the cause manifested in the effect. Every single discovery opens up a new vista of much more to be discovered. Feeling is the essence of knowledge. The knowledge which does not create feeling is dry, and that is what is going on mostly in our academic institutes and formal education nowadays. The truth, the eternal truth, the creator, is as incomprehensible as the vectors of the creation are. Limitations of the ever-evolving human intellect notwithstanding, the seeker must go on with a never-ending endeavor to seek and align with the truth, as herein lies a life of well-lived. It is not just what Guru Nanak propounded, but how he propagated that is equally important for educators to inquire and emulate for effective results. It is not just what it is not just what, I mean the content. It is not just what, but when, where, whom, and how, that is subtly taken care of by him. We read his life, we read his teachings, and the way he delivered those things, we get answers to all these. And most importantly, he walks the talk. Guru Nanak emphasizes that the seeker shall ever prosper. Khoji upjai badi din se. May the Almighty bless us all to seek, contemplate, and serve all as a service to the Creator. Sarbatta Pala. Thank you so much, the organization and all the eminent personalities for bearing with me, giving me time to talk. Hope I am not beyond time. Thank you once again. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Thank you very much. Now may I call upon Mr. Prem Kumar, Chairman of Gulf Council of CBSE Affiliated Schools, Kuwait.
Good evening. Good evening, esteemed guests.
You're perfectly audible, sir. We can hear you well.
Good evening, everyone. And this is Prem Kumar. From Kuwait. It's my honor and privilege to be present with eminent dignitaries. I'm just an educator in the Middle East, based in Kuwait now. I was in Oman, Muscat, for about 2.5 decades, and I'm here in Kuwait for the last 1 decade. I'm associated with the schools in the Middle East, and I'm a teacher of chemistry. And I continue to teach chemistry to the high school students. Education for 21st century learners should connect with real life situation is what all of us agree today. COVID-19 has paved way for this. Students are now becoming more independent learners as they're not having direct contact with their teachers. The project-based learning is gaining momentum in this part of the world. And as one of the esteemed panelists a while ago mentioned that the digital connections has enabled the continuity of education in all over the world. In higher education today, learning activities focus on challenging students throughout their studies, enabling them to acquire the knowledge, skills, and attributes that will equip them for a rapidly changing and complex world and ensure they have confidence to thrive as global citizens in the 21st century. The role of educators is to create the environment that best supports this learning process. And because the most significant learning environment is inside the head of any learner, not outside of it. It is very vital to ensure as educators that students are engaged in learning that is meaningful to them today. As Dr. Sam had mentioned a while ago, that salt, when they consumed, they should know that it's a chemical, sodium chloride. So the learning becomes meaningful when it touches the real life situation. So the big question for me as an educator during this pandemic time is, how can I ensure that learning is meaningful and help my students to connect more deeply with any learning activity? And how can my teachers do that as I head an institution? First of all, we should consider the two of the central main place in the life of a kid. They are the learning and emotion and motivation. When our emotions are activated, our cognitive functions are profoundly impacted. Similarly, when motivation levels are high, students engage more deeply in the associated learning task. Ask any educator today about the joys of teaching a highly intrinsically motivated student. Indeed, research has demonstrated the power of personal engagement, demonstrating that contextualization and personalization produce dramatic increase not only in students' motivation, but also in the depth of their engagement in learning. Over the past 3 decades of my teaching chemistry to high school students, I have developed an approach that has helped me make my own chemistry teaching meaningful and also helped all my students to connect deeply with their learning. I really want to see my students connect with the topic and ask more and more questions as they immerse themselves in their learning and enjoy learning as well. How can we achieve this? To achieve this, the curriculum of 21st century must be revamped, especially the CBSE and the NCERT textbooks. It must be more relevant. It must connect to real world and to students' career paths. This connection isn't always obvious, particularly when teaching an abstract chemistry concept that students can perceive as pointless or irrelevant. To stimulate students' curiosity and interest, I've introduced a contextualized approach, making the content relevant to my students and linking it with real world scenarios. Although I developed this method for chemistry classes, I'm sure it can be used with any subject, and I request all the educators to try and make it possible. As teachers, we should be in a position to quench their thirst when they ask questions like, why are we learning this? What use is this to us in our career as engineers, doctors, and so on? When we fail to quench their thirst, they declare that learning is not so meaningful. So I conclude by stating that learning has to be made more meaningful and more connected with real life world situations. That is my humble request to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would humbly request all the panelists to be within the time frame. We have eminent speakers from different parts of the world, and we want everyone to make their points heard. So it's a humble request. Next, we have Miss Pauline, born in Paris, France, now settled in India, a social entrepreneur and now sustainability director at Techno India Group, Kolkata.
Thank you, Devendra, for bringing me in on this platform. This is Pauline from France, actually talking to you from Kolkata, where I'm based as a sustainability director at Techno India Group. I will just go through three main points, trying to not repeat what has been said, because I would agree with most of the comments already said, but maybe adding on top of that. I think first point, it is interesting to see the failure of the education system as not the consequence to the crisis, but the cause of it. So kind of reversing the thinking process, thinking about how could the educational system, how could it have maybe saved us from the crisis or prevented us from going through the crisis? How can education, how could it have made us better react in terms of crisis management to it? And I think, as was mentioned already before by one or two speakers, it takes us back to sustainability education and to the kind of values that we want to bring into our curricula. I think if the previous generations of learners, as well as the present generations of learners, knew more about sustainability, knew more about how to think long-term, knew more about our connection to nature, our impact as a human being on our environment, maybe the crisis could have been maybe not prevented, but better dealt with, and its impact might not have been as big. So thinking about education as one of the causes potentially of the crisis and not only as a consequence of it, I think that is very interesting. Related to sustainability education, the fact that we know that sustainability should be one of the values that we inculcate to our students is not new. So I think now it's a lot about trying to implement what we know should be done and stop, always talking about it by making educational systems a bit more flexible and really daring to implement the curriculum changes. The second point that I want to raise is, it was brought in before in the conversation, is that one of the dangers that we see in the education system nowadays is the inequality of access to education, not only because of access to technological device, which is definitely going to be a reality, and I can see this with Techno India Group students since the beginning of the crisis. Depending on where you are geographically, you don't have the same amount, the same access to education. Depending on the facilities that you have technologically at hand, you will not get unequal access to education. But I think it also is dangerous in terms of an education system that may only reward the students that are spontaneously and intrinsically and organically self-learners and curious. Not all students and kids are born with this capacity to self-learn and to be self-disciplined. And it's not so easy to say that everyone will become self-learners. I think there are a lot of kids, especially because of lack of attention, lack of focus that we see today, a lot of kids who will not have this self-learning skill within their DNA will really struggle to make it out there in the digital education world. So I think this is a point to also have in mind. And third and last is the place that we want to give to mental health into our education. I think this is one thing that we have learned at the beginning of the crisis. I think one of the things that the crisis has taught us is that we cannot have 100% physical education system because it is not future-proof, but we can also not have a full digital education system because mentally speaking, in front of screens, trying to teach and learn through a screen is going to be mentally heavy for me. So a blended learning education system is, I think, necessary, as well as a place for mental health, or what we also call social emotional learning in our curricula, as well as campus premises. And something that I really believe in, finally, how to teach students to be optimistic, how to teach students to be positive, no matter the challenges that they face, because believe me, friends, we're probably, we're probably going to face other challenges on our journey. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Colleen. Now, may I call upon Mr. Matthew Thomas, founder of All India Educators Forum, which has more than 25,000 members as of date. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's really an honor to be here present among these eminent panelists. And I'm also glad that there are certain organizations who are beginning to think about a change. A few years back, we were all accepting the curriculum. We were going on with what was happening. And I'm so glad there are so many initiatives taking place where there is a discussion on a change happening. Now, that is a good sign. And many of you must have heard about that quote, I was born intelligent, but education ruined me. That's because the word education has been, taken in a wrong way in many of the contexts, because we are equating education with imparting knowledge, whereas I feel that education should be skill-based. So what is lagging in our present curriculum was that we have different types of learners. We have done in our B.Ed and M.Ed about different kinds of learners. We have visual learners, auditory learners, kinesthetic learners, reading and writing learners. But our classroom was not catering to all these categories. So what was happening was we were just concentrating on the reading and writing, that is the traditional method, and all the other learners were getting neglected. So what we were doing was we were providing homogeneous solutions to a heterogeneous group. You know that every child is unique, but we were trying to provide a homogeneous solution. Okay, you do this, you do this, you do this. And we were not taking into consideration the uniqueness of the child. In a way, I would say the transition to an online phase is in somewhat reduce that gap, because now we have visual learners learning from this. We have auditory learners learning, and also they are doing the reading and writing. So a lot of things have improved because of this online. However, there are a lot of flaws, or there are people who are speaking against it, but there are a lot of positive points for different types of learners that has come out because of the COVID condition. So for example, if you are taking a class, that class gets recorded, the child can see it over and over again. Whereas in a class, if the child is absent, then it's very difficult for the teacher to repeat it to all the absentees, or to repeat it n number of times. So in a way, I feel that the transition to online teaching, which has come all of a sudden, I think the teachers have well, adapted to the new situation, and they have gone on to online teaching within a few days, although there were a lot of challenges. So also the speed at which we are teaching this curriculum is a big issue, because we are all trying to finish our syllabus. We are trying to finish our curriculum. What is important for an educator right now is the curriculum, not the skill that we have to impart. We have an engineer probably who has done a lot of work, but he may not be able to fix a fuse. So what is the use of that education? So what is important is that we learn life skills. What is our education for? To use it in our real life, not collection of degrees and then not using in our practical lives. Because one important thing that all students ask is that, sir, where do we use all this in real life? Why are we doing all this? So I think our curriculum should be more application-based, more skill-based, and we can't ask a fish to climb a tree, nor can we ask, an elephant to fly. All children are unique. I think we have to respect the uniqueness of the children. We have to give them ample opportunities to grow. And I would like to see groups like this coming forward to take up initiatives in which we are able to provide a solution to this instead of the rote learning or memorization techniques which are being followed. I would like to see an education system which is imparting life skills, giving more emphasis on real life applications rather than memorizing and then writing out answers for a good score. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Now may I request Ms. Gurmeet Kaur, psychologist, career counselor, director at Hutchinson Vocational Institute, to lay down 3 to 4 points. Thank you.
Of course. Hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be the part of this panel. And I feel that today, as we are pondering upon the impacts and the re-impacts of COVID, I think COVID has teaches us many things. It's a great eye-opener for us. It has compelled us to think of altogether different way. I totally agree with Mr. Matthew, as he was saying that there is a dire need of inculcating life skills in the school. What I think, friends, that what we have been teaching skills to our students, we have been inculcating skills, but what we have missed to teach them is wisdom. So it reminds me of a story that it was a gang of 4. 3 of them were big, highly learned in the language, grammar, and sculptures. The 4th one was not so learned in bookish language, but had common sense. The 4 friends decided to travel to other parts of the country to better their intellectual and financial standings. However, the 3 learned friends had reservation about taking the 4th friend along with, but eventually they take him as they feel it looks bad. During their journey, they passed through a forest. There they saw bones of a dead animal under trees. Let's gather the bones and bring it to life, proposed the other. It will give it the correct shape. The not so learned heard it all. Don't forget, it's a loin. Don't bring it to the life. The 3 friends laughed away the warning. The 3 of them gathered the bones, but backed them in shape and plastered it with flesh and skin. The loin came alive. The creators beamed at their own success, but only for few moments, because the loin roared and pounced on the 3 learned ones. The one with the common sense has already gone away. The point to ponder is, like, we are inculcating the skills, but the knowledge that is the sustainability that we require in our generations is missing. But COVID has given us the chance to revise the things. It has given us the chance to believe that veg is the best food. It has made us realize that we can actually live simpler lives. COVID has made us understand that what's God plans for us, we must have direct connection with the powerful Almighty. He is the supreme force. Now let us join together as Boston Pledge has taken the initiative. I congratulate the management, the WILFO, that has created this platform for all the educationists to come here and to discuss about that what could be done. I feel that it could be done in 3 effective ways. That lies in 3 R's. First is revise, revive, and refresh. As academicians, you will agree that revisions play a crucial role in deciding our results. Similarly, if we revise that what we have loved, what we have done, and where it went wrong, then how, with all the disciplines we have created indisciplined generations and society, we need to revise that our system so emphatically good enough that we are making our generation's life ready. Have we made them learn that Nako Bari Nahi Bigana Sagal Sang Humko Ban Ai? Have we made them realize that Pavan Guru Pani Pita Mata Tat Mat, that means that we are celebrating every year the environmental day, but still we don't make them forge upon to think that what our father, the air that is giving us, the mother, the land is giving us, and we need to respect it. But this is given by this is one of the blessing of the COVID, that it is making us realize the importance, and it should be taught in our schools level. It should be, it is a time that we could revive our systems. I agree with all the panelists that we are thinking upon that there is a dire need that we should revive our systems that we are teaching in the schools, the basic curriculum that we are teaching them. There are the panelists that are there with us and that are from IITs, the director of IITs, and the system that we have in our IITs, that is one of the perfect. And why can't, we are looking at them, that why can't we have that systems in our schools also, that where the students who are coming out, why they have to concentrate on the conventional or pedagogies that are outdated? Why can't we have the systems that as the student coming out of the IITs has knowledge, has the things that he can give to the world. Similarly, if we can align those systems in our schools and can bring about the pedagogical change, this would entirely revise the system. Another thing that I feel that could be implemented is, along with this, as a psychologist, I have developed some of the systems that are implemented at the local levels, but those systems had made it really possible to bring upon the change that is required in our systems, that is based on experiential learning, flipped learning, peer learning. So I feel that these in the educators in the Springboard, they can help the educators to implement these initiations in their schools. They can help them initiate these systems. I feel that teacher training programs could be initiated in a revised manner so that every teacher can bring out the best out of every child. As Mr. Matthew was saying, that there is a uniqueness in every child who is there. So I feel that if the teacher is trained enough, he's capable enough to bring out the best of every child. So I think awareness about careers also should be initiated at the right age of 12 to 13 years, so that every student can make it realize that they are best. And it is not that if we all know that if fish is asked to climb a tree, it would spend its whole life that it is stupid. But if it is given the right direction at the right stage, then of course that is going to bring a paradigm shift in the career, in the satisfactions, and in the contemplations that are there in one's life. So our modus operandi should be to incite curiosity among students. It is well said that if you can teach a student a lesson for the day, but if you teach him to learn by creating curiosities, by making him self-motivated, he will continue the learning process as long as he lives. I wish we all, along with Education Springboard, can create such environment for the kids, and we can teach them multiple perspectives to make them future ready. Thank you.
Devinder, you're on mute.
I would request the IT team to unmute me. Am I audible now? Okay, so we have overshot the time frame, and I would love to hear out to each speaker that we have from different parts of the world. May I humbly request to all of you to just stick to the time frame. Next, we have Ms. Nina Alakal, founder of Mind and Me New Delhi.
Thank you so much. I feel so honored, so humbled to share space with such eminent personalities over here. I'm a founder of Mind and Me, which is an innovative learning center for kids, where I have researched on a lot of learning methodologies where children love to learn and they are on a path of self-learning. That is my aim. So I'm so glad, I can't tell you how glad I am to be a part of this panel. So here are my questions pertaining to education. Is it application oriented? Is it skill based? Is it knowledge based? Is it directed towards a sustainable environment, or building communities? You know, the answers to all these questions lie in integrating multiple perspectives for our future learners as well as our present learners. So I believe that, you know, a lot has been talked about the methodologies, the theories, the taxonomies. We are familiar with it. We know they exist. We are aware of it. But where is the gap? I want to quote Steve Jobs over here, who said, "Simple is harder than complex." You have to work hard to get your thinking clean to make it simple. So we got to simplify it for our teachers who are there on the field with the children. If you talk about curriculum planning, technological tools, the assessment techniques, the innovative methods, all these parameters have to be taken into account with easy, doable, simple tips for teachers to implement them in their classroom for their children, for the school, for their community, so that they work towards a global shift in education. Teachers are the connecting link. And from an Indian perspective, when we take the urban and the rural the perspective, the teacher is the connecting link, which, you know, we have to take in the teacher as the she needs to teachers who implement these techniques and have, you know, they have them up and running for their classrooms. So we need to have this connecting point for the teachers. So every teacher, you know, she has this perspective. Every teacher, Indian teacher, would say that, you know, this is my content, this is my curriculum, this is my expertise, these are my challenges. So how do I go about it? So we need to give them those, you know, those proper concrete steps as to how that learning is going to take place, whether offline or online. So it's high time that we move from the what to the how of every situation, so that education moves towards a therapeutic change, which is much required now. So I will end with Albert Einstein's quote. Albert Einstein said that education, the world of education, is a product of our thinking. It will not change without changing our thinking. So let's change our perspective to integrate multiple perspectives in education.
Very much. Thank you. May I now request Dr. Ramzi Nikli from Bahrain to come in.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm really humbled to join such an eloquent speakers from so different parts of the world, and I'm really learning a lot from everyone. Just building up on what has been said, I think you know, we were thinking that we were so modern in teaching and learning, and that's before COVID-19. But when during COVID-19, now since we're talking about online teaching and learning, we called ourselves traditional. So whatever we have been doing was so traditional. And I'll be speaking about, very briefly, from a managerial perspective, institutions, they started revisiting their learning strategies. So they started investing in infrastructure properly in digital learning. And they also revisited their pedagogy. So they focus more on participation rather than attendance. And they are reevaluating the assessment system. In terms of strategy, they are now integrating more e-learning as a crucial part of what we call emergency contingency plan. And even for extracurricular, because before we used to have physical presence of students in campus, but now not anymore. So extracurricular, now they are rethinking, they're revisiting the way and training, meeting, workshops, meeting with supervisors, with advisors. So the new normal, I think, will be blended teaching and learning. So there will be maybe a semi-campus experience, less traveling, semi-reliance on technology, not necessarily full. And there will be more independent learning, and we will be relying more on a spectrum of assessment tools rather than to be very specific. I think there will be more soft skills developed in students, like time management, self-discipline, and commitment. But there are challenges now. Challenges are institutions are trying to reduce as much as possible the negative impact this pandemic has and will have more on learning and schooling. Institutions now, they are thinking of how can they recover stronger with maybe a renewed sense of responsibility of all stakeholders, and with a better understanding of and sense of urgency of the need to close the gap in opportunities and assuring that all children have the same chances of a quality education. What possible solutions? I would just finish with that. I would say now government and private institutions, they need to pitch into short-term and long-term futures of educating and schooling, and also partnerships even in sharing provision of material, for instance, to less favorable places across the globe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now, may I call upon Ms. Sangamitra Poddar, please?
Hi, just a minute. Yeah. Am I audible?
You are absolutely audible. And
Okay. A very good evening and good morning to all of you. Hope that all of you are doing well. And it's a great honor to be a part of this kind of global August gathering. I'm extremely honored and definitely blessed to be a part of this discussion. Before I begin, I thank all the previous panelists for their wonderful views regard this, this current very much abnormal, but hard to accept current situation. So, keeping this global crisis in mind, I want to share that the biggest thing that this COVID has taught us, that we can actually, it has made us realize that we can actually survive with really very little basics. And it has actually practically taught us that yes, health is our biggest treasure. And we, till the COVID has struck us, we always thought that, running for achieving our goals is the most important thing. And we have many a times neglected health. And this has actually taught us that yes, health is the only thing that really matters. So as Professor Madhusudan Chakraborty rightly told, I completely agree with him, that online education can be, a supplementary way, because education is not only about imparting knowledge. Education means that we are bringing in total development, the mental and physical development, upgradation of the students, as rightly pointed by both Pauline, Shahana Madam, and Gurmeet as well. So, post-COVID, I think we should be giving a lot of stress, both in school education and with respect to college education, onto the physical wellness of the students, give importance to physical education. We have to, make them understand that if we are not taking care about the environmental issues in the real sense, not only the theoretical ways, we are in deep trouble. The entire earth is in a big trouble. And especially in the grassroots level, as you know, this was one of the major concerns of the previous speakers, that the online mode of education is not available to the grassroots people. So I think that we must be ensuring that at the grassroots level, post-COVID, they must be taught about personal hygiene, societal hygiene, and you know, ways of population control. And definitely we have to ensure that environmental awareness must be a part of everybody's life, and just not a part of the so-called curriculum. So, you know, I would request all the panelists to, you know, plan for a sustainable future, keeping the most important thing as the health, the mental health, physical health, and the environment at the, you know, the top priority. Thank you very much, all of you, and do stay well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Prakash Nair, principal from Tamil Nadu, who runs an association of principals having more than 59,000 principals as members.
Thank you, Mr. Devendra Singh, and the esteemed panel members, Ms. Pauline, Mr. Manindra Singh, and Ms. Sahana, and Mr. Madhusudan, and Mr. Pathakosh, and Ms. Nina, and Ms. Gurmeet, and Mr. Matthews, and Mr. Prem Kumar, and all. So wishing you all a very good evening. We know very well this is the evening time, and there is no day nowadays, there is no day we are starting without teary eyes. We look at the screen, we look at the television, and we are saddened by the sad news that we are hearing daily. So keeping solidarity with the victims of the families of the victims of COVID-19, let me confine with my points within 3 minutes, which is allotted for me. And if I think about the impact of COVID-19, I can see that in two dimensions. One is an immediate impact, and other is the long-term impact. Immediate impact is greatly reflected in the teaching learning process, and the long-term impact will definitely be there, found out in socio-economic problems. So one thing that I have noticed, because I being the principal of a school which is a CBSE school, I don't find the problems among the students with regard to e-learning. But I am seeing the other side, the low-income group. As UNICEF said in the report in April 18, as UNESCO said, there are millions of children. There are millions of children who don't have even a smartphone at home. There are millions and millions of children who don't have internet connectivity at home. As NIMHAN's report says, there are millions of children who are mentally affected. At this point of time, what we require is the low-income group, the marginalized society, the vulnerable members of the society. Those children, they were affected in three ways. One is the meals, the healthy meals that they were getting has been stopped. And the second is the learning gap that is created. Right from March till this date, there is a long learning gap for the low-income group students. And the third is nothing but the stress that they have, the economic stress that they have. For this, I am bringing out a few strategies. The first strategy, what I want to say here is nothing but we should ensure the continuity of learning for the government school students. That is the first thing. And the second one is the inclusive learning solution we have to provide to the most vulnerable and the marginalized students. And the third is that is nowhere related to school education, but that is related to the collegiate level of education. You may have seen the students from India are unable to go abroad to get the quality education now. So what we have to do? The best thing that we have to do is we have to improve the quality of higher education in India. This is the third strategy I am pointing out. And the fourth strategy is nothing but, as you said, as the panelists said, we have to integrate the classroom learning with e-learning. It is nothing but the clubbing both offline and online teaching, the blended learning. The fifth one, I can say, most of the teachers who have completed their B.Ed, they don't know anything about online pedagogy. What we require is we have to develop an online pedagogy. The different online pedagogical methods have to be adopted. And the sixth point is, as one of the eminent panelist members pointed out, we have to integrate the Indian traditional knowledge with the existing mainstream university education. Finally, before concluding, I'll tell you the four things. One is the employability. Second is productivity. As the earlier panelists told, the health and the well-being. If four elements are able to be there guaranteed, I can say that our strategies will be definitely successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nair. I wish I had another hour to listen to each of you, but we have to have the limitation of time, and we are going to extend for another 25 to 30 minutes if you all would agree, and we have some more very interesting facts coming from the panelists here. May I now request Ms. Anita Ramesh, Principal from Bangalore. Okay, I think Ms. Anita Ramesh couldn't join us. May I now request Ms. Edith from USA?
That's me. Hi, I think. I'm going to start by saying thank you for this invitation. This is obviously a critically important discussion. And my name is Edith Jokimpale. And I think rather than, continue the wonderful comments that you all have made with regards to this discussion, I think contributing my personal experience, especially because I am Canadian American and also Tamil Sri Lankan, would probably provide some insight into the life of what is going on right now, and also provide some insight moving forward. I should start by saying that I'm currently the principal managing partner of Copper and Cobalt, which is a consulting firm that catalyzes global development and change. I previously was at the Brookings Institution, which is a think tank that's globally renowned for its policy research, both at the macro and micro level. I was in the Global Economy and Development Program and worked on a myriad of topics, which range from the Paris Agreement to climate change, the Eurozone crisis, technology, productivity, and the future of growth. And to this discussion, actually, Center of Universal Education, CUE. We had a very pertinent discussion in 2015 that is about education and the future of work. So in considering that concept, we were trying to preempt what within the short term and what within the long term can we start to think about when we know that there are these massive systemic failures and therefore require systemic changes. That might have to be at the global policy level or national, and some of those things will have to be more at the grassroots, individual institutions and individual level. So for what we kind of gathered together, it required a few things, which many of you have really touched upon. One was building resilience. Obviously, because of all these failures within the institutional and the global level, there were individuals who were failing out of the system. How can we ensure that even though there may be failures moving forward, that people will be able to still get up and try again? The second was people need a much more globalized exposure. That's both on the cultural concept side And it's also on the disciplinary side. If you have more integration of arts and sciences, that will start to provide that. Another one is individualized tailoring, which many of you touched upon. You know, the not having a tailored experience to each of these individuals obviously causes problems. You can attribute many of that to mental health crises. And then what you really want to produce, given the nature of how work will change with AI, machine learning, and all these tools that are being developed, is yes, you want to increase the EQ of students who are coming out of these processes, but you also want a set of people who are experts within a specific discipline and know it extremely thoroughly. And you want an additional set of experts who are cross-disciplinary so that they can talk to multiple concepts at once and be able to bridge the divides between disciplines. That group is going to be pivotally important moving forward because there aren't many of those individuals who exist at this point in time. So to kind of conclude, it really seems to me that the crisis of both COVID and race is what has blown these set of issues really wide open. It's exposed the massive systemic failure that has always existed within educational systems. And what it actually does, though, as we all know in a crisis, is it provides an opportunity to massively push forward changes to education, both in the macro and micro level. We all acknowledge what those things will look like, but the question is, where do we really start to put hands, and how do we direct others to put hands towards this problem so that we won't have the same type of systemic failure in the future? I'm happy to connect with any of you outside of this time, and I'm sorry if I went over, but you know, feel free to contact me and let me know if I can help in any way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, may I call upon Ms. Sonia Jingran from New Delhi? Okay, I think Ms. Sonia is not here with us. Now, thank you all for your thoughts and input. Now, let me have the privilege of asking Dr. Jahangir Sultan to sum up the session in his own words. Then I would request Dr. Ghosh to enrich us with his thoughts and share his thoughts on the way forward. Over to you, Dr. Sultan.
You're muted.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you. And this is what a Bentley student does, you know, be able to always tell the professors straighten up. Okay, thank you so much to all the panelists. What an incredible collection of brains and minds and intelligence. Gives me great optimism to say that COVID or no COVID, we can go forward. It will be an injustice for me to summarize everyone. It will be a very, very difficult task and very difficult challenge for me. So, but I just want to touch up on a few things that I have learned throughout this session. You know, if I don't mention you by name, my apologies. So the first thing that I learned is that education must be democratized. You know, that's very important. And then the next is that how to build a situation where we contextualize the education in a more supplemental way. You know, and online education is important, very important, but it cannot be the entire education. You know, there's a role for everyone to play at this point. And then next I heard is that the before we go forward and embrace all the technological innovations and everything, don't neglect the ancient, what we already know. That ancient education, India is very rich country. India in the Southeast Asia, very rich. there's so many things. Trust me, if you look up all the solutions to deal with all the pandemic, they're there. How to educate the next generation, they're there. But we feel like his ancient education is not adaptable. Wrong. That's what we have to change. Okay, and then what I also learned is that education must be spiritual. Okay, you cannot just teach person to be a doctor without teaching the doctor how to be spiritual. It's religion. It's very, very important. It has a specific role in it. We as for professors, we should not be just teacher. We really should engage our students in an experiential way, and that would really allow us to teach our students why they're learning. This why is a very important concept that we often fail to teach our students. And so teachers have to be trained in this new paradigm that we're talking about. And, in terms of the learning environment, the learning, again, going back to the previous comment, is that it should be meaningful. So that students can understand the consequence of education, the need for education, and not just technological education, but also education that addresses the mental health issue. Because the fact that we hear that some students are depressed, and is a very important part of the equation going forward. And finally, what I have learned, and I'm ignoring many other important things, okay, is that while education has to be experiential, it has to combine arts and science, but the biggest problem that the emerging markets or many countries or people at the grassroots level are facing is the availability of technology. Unless we can solve that, it'll be very difficult to have a very expansive education to train to go forward. And so that's a task for us Boston Pledge, and every one of us. But at this point, the most important thing for us to recognize, what is the path forward? And to do that, I invite my friend and our chairman of the Boston Pledge, Mr. Partho Ghosh.
Thank you, Jahangir. Thanks to all of you. I was absolutely impressed by everything that I learned. I was a student this morning here in Boston, in the evening in Calcutta, or anywhere you are in different parts of the world. But what I learned is something so deep. I think I could celebrate that for the rest of my life, and in the process, hopefully make a difference with you in how education should evolve in the next, let's say, 25 years. We have to take a long-term view. Each one of you have made contributions which are like precious stones. And what I have done, I've taken notes. I thought in your honor, I developed first time in my life, a real life presentation. So I will share my screen, the presentation I have prepared as you were talking. And so I hope I have been able to reflect your thoughts, which would bring together how do we really want to move forward. Actually, I'm disabled. Jahangir, you have to enable me to share my screen. Just give me a moment. I still cannot. Could I do that?
Yeah, you should be able to do that.
Yeah, now I can do it. Okay. So please excuse me, it was done real life. As you were speaking, I was listening very carefully. As well, I was trying to ensure that I could absorb the thoughts and reflect it back. So I think, what came out of this morning here in the United States, evening in Asia, is something very important. that what we are trying to launch is important for the educators, for the future of the civilization, and we must take it forward. It would be a shame, after all the great thoughts that each one of you have shared, that if we cannot pull it together and make a difference, it would be a shame. Because we have a lot of conferences, people make great speeches, and then we go back to the same old style. I do not want to see that we do that in honor of you, in honor of what we are trying to build as Boston Pledge. So I will take you through some of the thoughts that gel as you were talking. In today's Economist, which just came out last night, this was the article. The COVID-19 is here to stay. People will have to adapt. The world is not experiencing a second wave. It will never go. It is the first and it will stay for long. Exactly where I started, that this COVID is serious, and this is July 4th, 2020. So I think we are having the conference at the right time, and we will build on a couple of statements that has impressed all of you. You have talked about him, and we have talked about Guru Nanak, but this statement kinds of brings together why we are here. Our real awakening takes place when we dedicate our life to exalted ideal. And I think the purpose of education is to help people whom that we come in contact with, is to define that ideal and then dedicate their lives towards that. This is what is missing today. And that's what I learned from you. And then I picked up another statement which John Kennedy used to make quite vividly. And I think it touches and summarizes exactly what you guys have discussed today. There are many kinds of courage: bravery under fire, courage to risk reputation, friendship, and career for convictions that are deeply held. But perhaps the rarest courage of all, for the skill to pursue it, is given to a few men. It is the courage to wage a silent battle to illuminate the nature of man and the world in which he lives. And as educators, I think we have this unique opportunity to illuminate the nature of man, the nature of woman, nature of humanity, and in the process, we could create a new world. So I think we are living at that juncture in history where we'll get that opportunity. And I have often defined education as a fine art that uncovers inner courage and guides the forces of self-expression of individuals, of an organization, of a society, of the world, towards a higher level purpose, towards a superordinate meaning. So I think that's what I got, is the essence of what we have discussed this morning in the United States, in the evening in Asia. But I like to build on it. These are the statements which we all believe in it, but how do we take it forward? These statements has existed for the last 1,000 years in different forms, from Plato to Aristotle today. But unfortunately, the way education has been shaped over time, that it has not been able to, as someone said, democratize knowledge or reach out to the base of the pyramid. We have not been able to do so. There's a reason. And I like to see that we form a group, that many of you have suggested, to address that. And I do believe education is a journey, as many of you talked. First, faculty. Yeah, the way we deliver education, digital, call it physical, call it macro, micro, individualized, universal, all the points that we made. It is a journey we have to continuously learn as faculty. Students are, of course, in the learning process. And the administration, the way educational institutes are run, they have to continuously innovate. I'm very glad to see one of my good friends is online, Nandakishore Kaglewal. He's a big educationist. In fact, right after I speak, if he's still there, I'd like him to share a few words. So given that background, these are my 3 takeaways today. And this I prepared real time, as you guys were speaking. And that's the digital ability that we have to bring. You have to listen, you have to process, you have to prepare, and you give it back. So that's what I'm going to do. There are 3 fundamental takeaways today. Firstly, I feel that all of you would agree, given the content, the richness of today's discussion, the Education Springboard program that we have conceived, we must take it forward. It's time to refresh. It is an important role. And I'll talk about how we could play that. Second, that came out is that time has come that we have to create a vision of the education forward from K-12 to higher education. And we have to create a sense of purpose. And I would like to dedicate the EdSP with you to create that vision so that we could circulate it all over the world, from Japan to California, from Norway, Sweden to Australia and New Zealand, because this is a global effort. And based on that, I put together some thoughts on the next steps. So mind you again, please excuse my tardiness, because this was prepared as you were speaking. So the first thing that I learned, particularly when Mr. Maninder Singh was talking about Guru Nanak, and then Sahara Singh was talking about Vedic philosophy, and then many of you touched about the inner development, Maharaj talked about Vivekananda, that education is basically a dynamo. And that is my conclusion taking from. One is to know the inner universe, know thyself. And I think Shahana was talking, or Swamiji was talking, the knowledge is within, we have to uncover it. The other part is the compassion for the environment. How do we connect with the nature? And environment in the broader sense, with people, with knowledge, with nature, with the universe. And this dynamo has to come to work. That's what I learned today. This is my summary of what I learned, that all of you in different ways talked about this dynamo. And particularly when Matthew was talking about, he also said this dynamo has to be customized. Every student is different. The dynamo will work differently, and we have to customize. Accordingly, I came up with these 5 messages as I was listening. Third, this comes from the statement I've taken from Mr. Maninder Singh, Dr. Maninder Singh, that we have to take education at the most fundamental level so that we could uncover knowledge within, enlighten virtue, make connections, both through homogeneous approaches and customized approaches across discipline. It's a very demanding statement, but I would like to see that we dedicate the next 2-3, we'll meet every 3 weeks, which I'll suggest in a moment, just on the point number 1, so that we could come up with a written document which we could circulate. The second, Sam Petroda talked about the Knowledge Commission. I think it's a very rich work that they did. I think it's important. I feel it has not been studied properly. We should study it and find out how to help nations, countries, states develop a strategic planning to education, because every environment is different. And in the process, weigh out the pluses and minuses of digital education. It would be wrong to reject digital education. It was wrong to assume that digital education will solve problem. As I mentioned right up front, when we were opening the session, that 70% of the people do not have access to the digital world. So it means the digital divide would increase if we more and more depend on digital education. The third, I felt there was a lot of emphasis, and I think makes a lot of sense, ways of self-learning. So how do we balance between digital versus personal touch, the development for faculty? Then comes the point about uncovering the knowledge within. What should be the process of education? Because knowledge within, to uncover that, it has to be highly customized. And how do we draw on our ancient philosophies, be it Vedic philosophy, Persian philosophy, Confucius philosophy, or the Greek philosophy? It's not that we have to only think of Vedic philosophy, we have to talk about ancient philosophies in general and take the best. And then comes the new approaches, what you guys have touched on, particularly Edith was talking about, of the life skills. How do we connect the dots? How we help students to connect different types of situations they represent. So I feel these would be our guiding pillars for the EdSP, and we will work together to write 2 or 3 chapters on each of these sections. And hopefully by end of this year, this group, I really mean all of you together, will come up with something that you are proud of, and we can take it to the global world. So that's then I will move to the next point. In the meantime, my computer is giving some trouble. Let's see whether I could, something popped up, some advertisement. So the next steps that I'm proposing, if you all agree, I know all of you are busy, but given the importance that you have attached to today's discussion, I think it is safe to assume that you would not mind dedicating 2 hours of your life every 2 to 3 weeks, Saturday PM your time in Asia, Saturday AM our time in North America, and we'll take one subject and one of you will anchor it. So that time is no longer 3 minutes, no longer 5 minutes, it'll be 20 minutes. We'll talk on the subject, you download it, we'll transcribe it, so we'll start building the chapters of the book. Then I would like to see, send to Devinder, the subjects that you will be particularly interested to talk on, 20 minutes each, so that we could start constructing the subjects of the chapter, and then we'll go one by one. We will study the Knowledge Commission and similar reports. Maybe I will ask Sam Petroda to share the work, and maybe one of us could take the homework to work on it. And after 15 sessions, we'll publish the book. This book would be the education of the future for the world. Then if we are really ambitious, which we should be, otherwise how could we educate ambitious students, that we should convert it into multiple languages. Sahana did make the point, importance of mother tongue is very important. If a child is not proud of his or her mother tongue, how could he be proud of himself or herself? If you have to learn the third language, where to belong, I think that means I do not belong to society. So I think it's very important that mother tongue is brought back while we will learn English, we learn German or French, but importance of mother tongue, I think extremely important. And then being very ambitious, could we create a virtual academy? Because many of you make the point today that teachers have to learn how to teach in the new world. That's a very powerful point. The technologies are changing, the nature of the environment is changing, what the students will need to do when they graduate is changing. So I think I would like to propose the Boston Pledge, create what we call the Boston Pledge Virtual Academy, where we come together once a year, or maybe twice a year, but it would not be a 1.5 hour session, it would be a 4-hour session. We have to time it in such a way that all over the world people could attend, and we'll call the Boston Pledge Virtual Academy of Education Development. That's the thought, and these are the kind of subjects I have in mind, which came up as we discussed: nurturing the inner spirit, creative thinking and nurturing creativity. Some of you talked about mental health, which is very, very important. I think, Pauline, you were talking about mental health. Part of respecting others. We do not know how to respect each other these days. Forget respecting nature. If I cannot respect my mother or my father or my brother or sister, how could we respect the nature? So there's a lot of fundamental questions that we are facing with. So we'll choose the subjects once you send me. These are some examples. And hopefully that would lead to create a journey for us. And you are the leaders of education system. This is our leadership journey, and we must take it forward. And please, please, on behalf of the Boston Pledge, my colleagues, I'd like to first thank Jahangir for setting up the platform for us this morning here in US, evening at your time zones. Devinder pulling together all the brilliant speakers that you had, and you crafted it very well. We did not really shoot. I did not expect that we'll do so well within time. It's very difficult because we all like to talk, and we have been able to control that desire and was in the process very crisp. My hope is that if you really think this will be useful, please send us an email, because we want to take it forward. And we want to do it every 3 weeks, if it's okay with you. If it took 2 weeks, if you want. Every week we originally planned, it may be a bit difficult. But every 2 weeks, I think, is doable. And because we all believe this is important, if we really believe it's important, we should do it every 2 weeks. We should not join this conference for the sake of conference, because we want to make a difference. And we have to become the examples. And as we become the example, we will be able to make a difference. So with that, I would like to thank you very much for making this conference, I would say, I think all of you would agree, a success. And I think someone has raised a hand. There's some questions, answers. Devendra, I would like you to coordinate that. And maybe in the next 5 to 7 minutes, we can wrap it up. But I'll give it back to Devendra.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ghosh. That was brilliant. And it's a great learning for me how to prepare a real-time presentation. So this is first time I have seen someone making real-time presentation. And I'm sure most of us might have also witnessed it for the first time. Thank you very much. Well, we have a couple of questions here coming from different parts of the world. The first question is from Mr. Montu Bosak from Kolkata. His question is, developing an innovative mindset is an utmost important quality. I hope that can be inculcated in students, especially in this pandemic time when innovation has become most relevant now. My question is, so now the question begins. My question is, how could we incorporate the idea of innovation in our students? Do we have a framework that can be used by the teachers to teach students to be innovative in their thought process? I open this question to all the panelists. If anyone would like to take it, please go ahead.
If I may, I'm going to use a concept that's called fail fast. Essentially, that first point that I had even brought up to you was one of resilience. And in order to be innovative, you have to try outside of your current knowledge base in something. When you try in something, there's going to be a low percentage of success, right? Because you are attempting to acquire knowledge. And if you fail, you have to be able to understand why that failure occurred, then look at what are steps that you can take to upgrade your skill set, and then try again. That will be an iterative process. And with each iteration, you will get stronger and therefore build resilience. So to that wonderful question, that is what innovation really is. That is one of the pillars of Google, is fail fast. And it's been very widely adopted by the most innovative firms and governments.
Thank you, Edith. Thank you very much. The next question is from Darshan Singh from Fazilka, Punjab. The question is whether the method of teaching will be changed after COVID-19 pandemic.
May I take that?
Please.
Firstly, thank you for the question. I think it definitely yes. And that's why we had this conference. But what is not clear, how that change would occur. Because the easy answer would be, well, we'll do more teaching on online and Zoom. But as we know, that is not available for many, many people around the world. Perhaps only available to 25, 30% of the people. But if we follow that path, we will only help to further increase the digital divide, or the knowledge divide, in a knowledge society where knowledge is the most competitive resource. So I think that if we go just digital, as Sam was talking about, and many of you talked about, it would be dangerous. It would be dangerous of the highest order. It's better not to do anything. So I think that's why I find this conference so useful, that if we could come up with new approaches of how to virtual reality, digital reality, and physical reality, how they could be fused so that everyone could afford. And I don't have an answer, but that's the nature of the question that we have to develop answer to. And that's why we'll have these 15 or 20 sessions. We have to be, as Edith, you rightly pointed out, we have to be extremely innovative to design that approach, which is on one side affordable, on the other side appreciates the wisdom of the past, on the third side reachable to everyone. And the other point, I think I really love the point, Matthew, you were making, that it has to be customized at the same time. A child growing up in Congo versus a child growing up in Colombia, they're different. We have to appreciate that. Yet they have to compete in the globalized world. How do we do that? And I think, again, I don't have an answer. It's a good question. And that's one of the purpose of this conference, that we have to together innovate that. And Edith, as you said, we have to follow your guidance to first weed how we could become innovative and then develop some programs to see what we could experiment. We have to experiment. And Dr. Singh, Maninder Singh made a very important point which touched my heart when he quoted Guru Nanak. By the way, Maninder Singh, I also look up to Guru Nanak with as much, Devinder Singh knows that, with as much reverence as I look up to Vivekananda and Tagore. And the point is, where I find challenged, and Sahana Singh also brought it up, our inner universe is very deep, very deep. There's a lot of knowledge embedded there. How to mine that M-I-N-E, so that we unlock the mind, M-I-N-D. And I think that is where I would like to see we put in a lot of energy in the next 6 months. So let's be open, but we don't have an answer. Devinder, back to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ghosh. The next question is from Rajendra Mishra, Kolkata. The question is, I run an academy named ECIS, Each Child is Special. Wow. The motto, that's the motto. But how to make them feel and answer to the questions that what will I do? I'm sorry, the question is twisted. So, okay, I'll just frame the meaning of this question. So here Rajendra wishes to ask us where the reality is now survival at stake. We are following curriculums which contradicts knowledge and education altogether. How to go with this as of now till further correction in the system?
I hope I'll be able to answer to this question. So as one of the panelists was telling, that how to frame the syllabus and how to complete the portions, this is not a question that we have to find out now, but what we have to teach the children, how to make them compassionate. So we have to teach the sympathy. We should teach them how to be silent. We should teach them how to be patient. That is the basic thing that we have to teach at this point of time during COVID-19. It is not the syllabus that is there important. It is not the education system that is important now. We have to make a framework for the children to be compassionate, to be sympathetic with others, to collaborate with others. These are the basic skills that they should acquire at this point of time. This is my answer to this question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nair. And first of
Do you
all,
mind if I add something to that concept? I believe that flexibility is going to be critically important too, right? Obviously, we have had to become flexible and move to these different forms of learning, but building that flexibility within students so that when they're approaching the world, they're able to take in all inputs and utilize them to form a worldview and then create a pathway is important. There is no direct pathways anymore. You don't just go from one thing to another like you used to. So you have to be able to constantly re-innovate and be flexible.
Yep, very good point.
Thank you very much. We have many questions, and I'm afraid we won't be able to answer all of them here in this session, but we will be very happy to write them the answers.
One very tough question, which I thought Dr. Singh would like to answer, which was, I thought it was a very demanding question, but maybe we could end with that question, answer to that question. Apparently, Dr. Singh, Maninder Singh, I'm talking to you. Someone questioned that you did say at one point that God is unfair but merciful. And one of the attendants is basically asking, how could you say that God is unfair? So maybe you want to elaborate that. That's, I think, is a very demanding question. Personally, I don't have an answer, but let's hear your thoughts.
Well, thank you, and I'm honored also for your mention and your points that you were saying. As far as this statement, I read this statement in an English book written by a priest, and initially I was not convinced by it. Sort of, it was a question, but later on when I read it again, maybe I missed the word just. Well, God is not fair. And now when if we see it in our courts, if the judges, they deliver justice, then everybody gets just what he deserves. But God doesn't deliver that sort of justice. He's not fair. He's not merely fair, you can say. He's more than fair. He's merciful.
That's what I thought.
So,
See, that's what I
maybe
thought.
I missed.
Very good.
I missed that. I'm very sorry, and I think now it's clear now. I just missed that.
I thought you will say that. I'm glad. Maybe we should connect very soon. Very good.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And thank you for the question. Whosoever raised it, I think he clarified it for all the others. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So thank you very much for the wonderful questions, for the wonderful thoughts, and your time, your presence really made this session a wonderful session, one of the best sessions in my life.
Devendra, I've got one question before you close it, because as you could see, there are 48 participants. Everyone whom I could see looks very eager. Their eyes are looking brighter, and their faces are looking absolutely inspired. At least I feel very inspired. I was wondering whether if any one of you want to make any comments, because this is just start of a long journey. And I would like to really work personally with all of you and the Boston Pledge. I know I can speak for Jahangir and all the other members. There are a lot of other members who you cannot see, but they are online. Any comments you would like to make? What did you like? What you did not like in today's session, so that we could improve? Because there's a continuous spirit of Kaizen. In Japan, Kaizen has been the key word, as you know, and we have to. So any comments? I could say my friend Puran Dang is there. Puran may want to make a few comments.
Sir, if I'm permitted, if I can share something.
Yes, please, Matthews.
Yeah, so we had a lot of discussions regarding the change that we're expecting. I'm also happy that the CBSE themselves are working on a curriculum along with NCERT. And we are seeing a lot of changes. I mean, those who are rigid about curriculum and all, we can see a lot of art integration being introduced, which are good positive steps. And we have something to look forward. But at the same time, when we are gathered here, I mean, when we are looking out for the future, I think our discussions should also venture into specific modules of how we can reach out to students. Otherwise, you know, most of these webinars end up as discussions and nothing happens.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, so my suggestion would be that we make a concrete plan, and probably people who are interested or equipped can create specific modules and present them instead of just talking and just finishing off that thing.
Yeah, Thomas, as you know, when I presented the case, the point that was made, was the kickoff session to hear everyone. Now, you would send us emails, the subjects that interest you. So here onwards, it would be a specific subject which you will discuss for 20 minutes. Maybe we'll have 2 speakers, then brainstorm, and that would be converted into a chapter of a book. So we will be very end product oriented. But this was to get the feeling. And the feeling is, yes, we want to do it. And I laid out, as in my presentation, I don't know whether you watched the presentation, some guidelines which has emerged, and then we'll take the next steps. Is it okay with you? Around specific subjects.
Yeah, so also I wanted to know whether this group is a constant or it keeps changing, because when there is a change, then dynamics change because they don't know what was discussed in the previous meeting. So every time, then the whole thing goes back to square zero.
No, I think that's a tough one because everyone has volunteered their time. So I think it would be, I would like to see same group appears, but some may not appear. But I would suggest, it would be, again, we use the word hybrid many times today. It would be a hybrid. Some new people would join, some people may miss the next meeting. But let's say, Matthew, you pick up a subject. You talked about how to make education more customized, for example. That subject you would lead, and we have to make sure people who are interested, they come to contribute. So we will be very action-oriented because, as you know, one of the things India outscores any other country is number of meetings per capita. That's the only place we are highest. But delivery per capita, we are the lowest. So I think we have to reverse that we can convert, you're absolutely right. We like to see we can convert this into specific action, which in some cases we may have to take to policymakers. Some cases we will say that, look, follow whatever the Education Council is saying, but could we inject some creativity, innovation within that structure? So I think it will evolve. Very good. Devendra,
Puran, you're muted.
Edit, yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we have one question.
One moment.
One second. Puran's still muted.
Puran, you're muted. You have to unmute yourself. Jahangir, can you unmute Puran by any chance? Puran, there's a button at the left side of your screen.
Yeah. Mute, yes.
Okay, now you're good.
Okay. What I said was, thank you, Partho, for inviting me. It was such an illuminating discussion. And what you are saying makes all sense, that we take one subject and go thoroughly into it and then create a book. What I, think most is how to develop a young child in school so that he appreciates that this world is very complex and that there are so many countries and people with different economic status. Some people are so rich, some people are so poor, living in tribal areas, no education, no food. In my opinion, the best education that we can give to these children, that there are people out there, they need help, and therefore they should be taught that it is not the ivory tower that you are living, there are people, and therefore inculcate in them a feeling, a kind of kindness, a kind of action that they have to help them as they grow. This is a challenge, a big challenge, and there are so many other things which have been discussed, but I think in education, they should also be taught about great men like Vivekananda, like Nelson Mandela, Gandhi, so many good people, Martin Luther King, and make them a universal resident, just America, Canada, India. Universal person, a universal man who will look after the family, look after the country, look after all those things, but at the same time, go beyond to those poor children, go beyond to those poor people living in drains and trenches and do something about it. That feeling has to be brought in the children. I think that should be part of education as one of the very important points, which should be one of the points we discuss in the discussions with Partho you have suggested.
Absolutely. No, very good point. I fully agree with you. Absolutely. There's one question I must want to answer. It's from Ghana. I don't know who would like to answer, but let me read it. It is from MK Tiatia from Ghana. His question is, in this new age where developing nations, disadvantaged is digital age, which we discussed, how can those in the arts, particularly musicians, positions themselves to benefiting from the new age, especially knowing that people would only spend more on entertainment when they have their basic needs met? That's a very tough question, but a very valid question.
Can I take that? I know
Yes,
that
please.
this
Yeah,
is going
please.
to sound kind of random,
Yeah, sure.
but so on the whole, by the way, all of the answers to the questions that you have exist in research and also exist on the application side. They just may not be accessible as a collective. So it's the important work that you guys are doing to bring this all into a singular resource is, in my mind, absolutely necessary and incredible.
By the way, you includes you.
Well, I'm going to do what I can.
Okay.
And then, to this very specific question, I'm going to draw on a time that I was at Brookings. So as I said, I'm trying not to repeat a lot of the high level conceptual stuff. I'm just going to talk from experience, and maybe you'll be able to bring it to your own experiences, right? And tailor it towards your own. So when I was at Brookings, there was a research paper that came out in 2014 about how in metropolitan areas, African Americans who are working age, males, so that would be 25 to 54, were unemployed by 25%, okay? And at the time, the unemployment rate was about 5%. So you know that there's this massively oppressed group that even though people are more widely having success. So I'm sitting in Brookings and I go home, and while I'm going home, I see a band that's playing on the street. And there's a whole crowd that's forming around them, and they're all having a good time, and they have a bucket and people are dropping money into it. So I go home, and the next day I come up at around 7 o'clock in the morning, and I see that band at my metro station. So I let them finish whatever song they're playing, and I went up to them and I said, hey, do you guys have a way that I could share this music digitally with other people? It happened to be a day where we email each other cool music internal to Brookings. So if you have something, let me know. They said no, okay? Now, all of us know that there are so many digital tools that use global networks, and we can provide content that can go very far. So over my lunch break, I made them a website and I brought it to them. I demoed it and I said, what do you guys think? And they were so excited. So I then, through the next week, I became their co-manager. I managed the business end of things. And anytime that they got any contact, like a business card or whatever, I had them give it to me so that I could be very responsive. I created social media for them. I built out their website to include more content about them. And what started to happen was now they had access to different kinds of opportunities. They played for the Secretary of Education, they opened for them, the White House Historical Association. They rubbed some lawyers next to the White House the wrong way because their music was so loud. And essentially a law blog found the internal emails that they had been sending, complaining, and trying to actually uproot them from where they were playing. And it got picked up by the Washington Post and the Washingtonian, and they played at the Kennedy Center. This happened within something like 4 to 5 months. So, that ability to catalyze change with the use of existing tools is there. But not everybody has, as you guys have all acknowledged time and time again, not everybody has access to those tools. How do you get some individuals who know those tools extremely thoroughly to serve underprivileged groups, and to do that very conscientiously, with partnership, so that they completely understand the cultural and socioeconomic issues that that should be broken. But if you're not careful, can cause further problems. That is the line that we're all trying to walk, I think. And I just wanted to share that to let you know that it is possible. It's not an impossible task.
Impressive.
Thanks, that's a Bentley education.
Of course, the challenge would be that, there are a whole lot of artists right now who are looking for work, right? So the same digital space is now being, is being used by all these people trying to gather attention. So that is going to be a big challenge we have to handle.
Very good point. Very good point.
I think for that point, people will start to coalesce around niche concepts. You will be interested in something, and because there are, 7 billion people, it's okay because the artist group is not that large among 7 billion people, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would like to add 2 points here. Just 3 sentences. The purpose of education is to ignite passion to serve. This is what I feel. The second is love for indigenous, eco-friendly, handcrafted practices brings us close to nature. And third, the question that came up is how do we promote art, music? Now, I want to share a very short experience of mine. I faced the similar challenge with so many artists from different parts of Bengal. Now, I feel we have to promote local talent, and that can be the biggest service to the mankind. And the way forward is to create opportunities. Now, in the December 2019, I talked to a global hotel chain to put up a show of local talent in Kolkata. The next step, what I did was very interesting, and I'm sure you might like it. Every week, we started providing stage to musicians and artists from the remotest part of Bengal. For most of them, it was the first-hand experience to step into a 5-star property and a dream comes true. And thankfully, we were able to create opportunities for about 50 such artists, and we have seen their standard of life gone up. It has improved a lot, and today I keep on receiving calls from them for very small little things like, brother, they call me Dada, and I love to hear that. Dada means brother in Bangla, and say, Dada, have you taken your food? So this is the kind of bonding that got developed. It is just by the virtue that we created opportunities for them. So that's all I have to say. Thank you. Now,
Yes.
with your permission from the chairman and all the respected panelists and the members, shall we move ahead towards the vote of thanks?
Maybe Jahangir should extend. He is the boss of the session.
We all are participants, given the impressive collection of all the talents, I feel very, very humbled. Essentially, this has been a pretty learning experience for me, very much so. The keywords, so many keywords stand out. I think online education is here to stay, but it has to evolve, and it is going to get harder and harder. And but with all these ideas that we're getting, hopefully we should be able to come up with some solutions that will make education affordable, destroy the digital divide, okay, and make our solutions reach people who really need, people who are at the bottom of the pyramids. It's very easy for us to, especially from the United States point of view, especially coming from Bentley, where very expensive private school and luxury in terms of education, technology, and everything. But I look at it from the other side. The other side is a very dark picture. They don't have the access to technology. That's what we have to do. And we have to make education relevant for them. We have to make education relevant so that they can do something with that, okay? Because everyone is born with incredible intelligence. God has given us that. They just need a little bit of tweaking so that they can improvise and use that God-given talent to do that. And I think Boston Pledge has been able to do that for a while in a very humble sense, and we will continue to do that. But I wanted to thank all the panelists, number one. What an incredible collection of the brilliant minds. Number two is special thanks go to Devender. He has been incredible, hardworking, and was able to bring all these folks together in this panel and the attendees. And I also like to thank my colleagues from Bentley University, Rupam and Mohesh. We've been very helpful in designing this platform. And last but not least, thank you, Partho, for your ability to do real-time summary of the path forward. And I am hoping that we will be able to deliver on our promises with your leadership. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Goodbye. Thank you very much to all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.